Hi, it's JamesAnimalHarrison. I'm back with Sunday Stories number 6. And what we're going to talk about today is basically the transition from high school to college and my experience with, or inexperience, I guess you could say, with drum and bugle corps auditions. So, like I said in my previous stories, through McDonald's All-American Band and All-State and all that kind of stuff, I was always trying to be very active as a drummer. I was also an officer in the band. I was the band president, vice president, then the president, and then I was also a senior superlative, elected most talented, along with Debbie Guerin. But anyway, so all that activity plus, school and whatnot, I got a lot of scholarship opportunities. Most of them mail-in type stuff from different schools and whatnot. But I actually wanted to go to the local college, which was Murray State University, because I wanted to study with Tom Van Arsdale, who was the percussion instructor there, who had been a student of Tony Cerrone. And so I at that time, Tony Cerrone in San Jose State was a big deal. So I wanted to study with somebody who had done that. So through connections and Dave Wells, who was the marching band director at Murray State at the time and whatnot, I signed up for scholarship auditions, and I performed a multiple percussion piece, a snare drum piece, a timpani piece, xylophone piece. I don't remember if I did drum set or not, but I did a little bit of everything across the board. And the reason I'm saying that is at the time, I actually could not sight read melodic music. I could not read. I knew what the notes on the staff were, but I couldn't just look at something and play it. Rhythmically, I was fine, but note-wise, I didn't have any background in that, and I had slid by that for a long time. So I actually, believe it or not, had to memorize, even writing the notes in where there were like a lot of ledger lines and stuff, of the piece I played. And had a friend of mine from the high school named Amy Knopfsinger accompany me on the piano, and I went in and auditioned, and I was fortunate enough to get a full scholarship for all 4 years. So full tuition for 4 years, which was great because I at the time was part of a single parent household with four kids. So it was great, and I loved it, and that was my introduction to Murray State University. So, and because it was a full ride for 4 years, obviously I was obligated to maintain a certain GPA and all that kind of stuff, which I did because I did not get great grades in high school because I just wasn't focused. But you had to be in college. So that being said, I got to college, and it was a great experience. Now, the reason I said all that was because when I was a senior in high school, I also auditioned for the Phantom Regiment Drum and Bugle Corps, because we had a guy from a town 40 miles away or so, named Mike Mann, who had marched tenors in Phantom, come in and work with the high school drum line. And he had said that I should audition. So I went up to audition for Phantom as a senior on tenors at the time, actually. I remember being kind of flipped out because Marty Hurley had written the tenor music to where it was just 3 drums at the time, tri-toms. The high drum was on the top line, I believe. It might have been the top space, either the E space or the F line, and on a treble clef. And the B flat, or the B line, was the middle drum, and then the F space or the E space on the bottom. I don't remember if it was the line, excuse me. I don't remember if it was line, 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 or space, line, space, but I still have some of them, so I guess I could look it up. All the warm-ups and music were written that way, and the idea was when you saw the high space, you knew that we were going up here. It was a visual thing, and if you saw the middle line, you knew you were going here. So it was a different experience, but I did it, and then I was selected to McDonald's All-American Band, which was part of the last story, and therefore I had to miss a big camp in October and a big camp in November and a big camp at Christmas. I called Marty and told him what was going on. He said, "Oh, go to McDonald's, come back and audition next year. McDonald's only happens once. You're in high school, you have plenty of opportunities to march." So that was my plan. Anyway, the summer I graduated high school, I remember going and watching Drum and Bugle Corps, and Madison Scouts came out with 12 snares that year, and I was just floored, blown away. And I just said, oh, I've got to be in that line. I've got to be in that line. So after I graduated high school, I went along with Kent Ebersmeyer, a friend of mine. They had an audition date where I think it was that one. I might have even been by myself on that one. I'm not sure, but it was like if you lived outside a certain amount of miles, you came on this date to audition. So I learned 2 solos written by Richard McClendon, who at the time was doing the Murray High School drum line. The year after I graduated, he came in as one of the band directors. And he had some solos, so I learned those solos and I prepared them and played them in the audition along with several, I guess you'd say, warm-ups and stuff that they had written on a chalkboard. It was at a school in Madison. And there were a lot of people there. And then at the end of it, they kind of give you some tips and whatnot. And then you went down to this almost like a basement or a big gym type thing in the below level of the school. And there had to be 30, 40 drummers at least in there, and maybe even more. And they would just put you on a snare and put you in a line and start moving you around. And you were playing all kinds of warm-ups. And there was a guy named, I think his name was Joe Murray, who was a snare tech, who was brutal. He'd come and get in your face and, play on the drum and, yell at you for not listening and matching. And he'd just grab your drum and move you into a different place in the line. And he was just doing that all day long. And it was a whole weekend type thing. And we had to run, we had to do push-ups, and the drummers were yelling, do them on your fist, and all this kind of stuff. It was a pretty intense weekend. And they told me to come back the following week. So I did. And I can't remember if the horn guys were there. So I had some friends that auditioned, but they didn't have to go back. But I had to go back the following week. And I went back. That drum line was easily half the size that it was that first week. And actually, I didn't recognize a single person from the week I had auditioned. So same thing, but what I did recognize was a lot of people who had been in the drum corps already, because I had watched them practice the previous summer, and I recognized a lot of the snare line people. I believe the head instructor was Christus Theo at the time. And anyway, so same thing, you got in line, they made you do all this stuff, and pulled you out of line, pushed you around a lot and stuff like that, trying different lineups. And then they moved me to tenors. So I remember learning the music to How Deep Was Your Love, which they had played as the closer the following year. So we did that, and at the end of that weekend, they said, okay, you're going to be on tenors, you're in, when can you move here? And I was like, excuse me, what? And they said, when can you move here? You need to be here, living here by January, because the drum line, especially new members, has to be here every weekend. And I didn't know that. I thought you only had to be here one weekend a month. And he said, no, that's the horn line, not the drum line. And I was just devastated because I knew, because of my scholarship, I couldn't be there every weekend because I had commitments to be in certain ensembles and all that kind of stuff. So, and they had said, well, you can transfer schools. I said, yeah, but are you giving me 4 years tuition paid? So that ended, between the experience of Phantom and then Madison, pretty much ended my drum corps auditions because I knew I couldn't commit to the off season. The summer was fine, but all the off season stuff, I couldn't do that because I had to be a member of certain groups and performances and stuff like that. I think after your first year, you might be able to get around it a little bit, but as the first year, I couldn't do it. So I had pretty much given up on that, and I started playing in a band, which is very popular in the Western Kentucky, West Tennessee, Southern Illinois area called Splitwater Creek. So I started gigging a lot with that group. And a friend of mine named Steve Holland was the drummer, and he was a drummer in a couple bands, couldn't do it. He ended up contacting me, I think, through Chuck Simons at Chuck's Music Center, and I ended up getting that gig. So I could work around that and my scholarship, but I couldn't work around the drum corps. They couldn't work around me, basically. So the following year, Richard McClendon was, I believe it was the following year, was going to be the drum corps instructor for, the drumline instructor for a new group out of Evansville, Indiana called the Imperial Guard. And Richard convinced me, hey, I'm driving up, come up and try out. And I went up, and did it, had a blast and whatnot. And I believe John Wooten ended up being in that snare line, because I think Richard got several people from Louisiana, where he had been prior to coming to Kentucky and whatnot. But anyway, long story short, I ended up not marching in that group because I had got to where my gigging schedule was so full, I was making a lot of money. So that was pretty much the end of the drum corps end of it. I would still go watch it. I would go to, where they were warming up and watch them all day and take notes and talk to instructors and stuff like that. But I pretty much figured that because of my scholarship, I wasn't going to be able to work around most of those situations. And then when the gigging started, I didn't want to give up that money. So that was the beginning and end of my drum corps career. So a lot of people are like, when did you march? When did you march? Well, I didn't, because of that situation. I made the cuts at a couple corps, but because of other situations, I couldn't do it. So anyway, that got me into just working and becoming a working drummer on drum set, and then studying music as a music major. I was a music ed major at the time. And anyway, so the reason I told this story is so I could get it out there, because a lot of people keep asking me that, and I feel like I have to tell that story a bunch of times. Splitwater Creek, I'll get into that at a different time. It's a different story. Great bunch of guys, great music. And that led to meeting other people, where I always had that opportunity to have gigging going on. So I've always had like one leg in the, what I call the rock world or country world or gigging world, and another leg in the education world. So I kind of always straddled that to make sure I kept that balanced in a lot of ways, and it really helped me in a lot of situations. So that's a quick Sunday story of my inexperience with drum corps because of my full ride scholarship that paid for all 4 years, although it took me 5. So anyway, there you go. I did change my major, not out of music, but into more of a music business thing, because I was getting really burned out on the education side of it. But anyway, long story short, that's what happened with my drum corps experience. And it really bums me out, because nowadays there's a major commitment. They actually contract you now. But because of the internet and because of videotaping and whatnot, they have video assignments that they have to turn in weekly and bi-weekly and stuff like that. So by the time they actually report in May or June, they've done so much ahead of time. But back in the day, when none of that, the internet didn't exist, you had to travel and go there. And again, the horn line was 1 week in a month, but the drum line was every week. And so that was a killer for me. So you're very fortunate you live in an age of technology, because the opportunity is greater. It might be even more difficult to make it nowadays because the circle is bigger. But that's, it's worth it if you can do it. I kind of regret not doing it, but I just couldn't. I had no way to pay for college otherwise, and I couldn't give that up. So there you go. There's the Sunday stories about my auditioning for college and the drum corps experience against that. And learn your piano background, because it put me behind the 8 ball when I started in college. So there you go. Thanks.